Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news for Hugh Freeze, the Auburn Tigers, coming Friday morning from the recruiting trail. Four-star defensive lineman Nate Marshall flipping his commitment from Michigan to Auburn. Now, many of you guys know I'm a Michigan fan. This one stings from a Michigan fan's perspective. Wish them all the best, but I think more importantly, the Auburn fans, I think you're getting a legitimate difference maker on the defensive line. I think that's the biggest story to me, at least, in terms of what Auburn's doing on the recruiting trail, where we've talked about it all summer. Yes, Walker White, Cam Coleman, they get a lot of the attention from this Auburn recruiting media. You look at the defensive line that Auburn is quietly building from the high school ranks. It's just filled with difference makers. You look at the 2025 class alone, it might be the best defensive line class we see in the 2025 cycle. They got 6 players on the defensive line committed that are top 100 national prospects. You talk about how Auburn goes about closing the gap between teams like Alabama and Georgia in the SEC. Look, Hugh Freeze knows it. We got to get the defensive line right. That is exactly what Auburn's doing on the recruiting trail. Want to get into Nate Marshall, talk a little bit about what he brings to this Auburn program. We talked a little bit about it 30 minutes ago, but I want to get into the film and kind of highlight some of the things we were talking about. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Auburn fans. We just talked Auburn football, 30 minutes ago when we were kind of talking about the momentum Auburn's building. Well, now they make it official with Nate Marshall. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. And without further ado, let's get into Nate Marshall. I think you first want to start drawing some player comps. And I think I said this when he committed to Michigan. He kind of reminds me of Keldrick Fall coming out in the 2023 class as this really big frame, very developed defensive lineman that could play all over the defensive line. And what has been one of the bigger conversations we've had with Keldrick Falk during this offseason is, Keldrick Falk's up to 288 pounds, probably going to play primarily at that defensive end spot, but I wouldn't be in the slightest surprised if, on those third and long situations, those pass rush situations, Keldrick Falk moves into the inside at that 3 tech and can kind of challenge interior offensive linemen from an athletic standpoint. I see Nate Marshall kind of having a very similar trajectory where he's 6'4", 265 right now. He is a big, long frame that's not necessarily fully physically developed. I could see him getting up to 285, 290 pounds, very similar to Keldrick Falk, and being a versatile defensive lineman that you can move all along the defensive front. But at the end of the day, the length, the size, the athleticism that Nate Marshall brings to the table, that combination, it just makes him a difference maker on the defensive line. You get into the film, I think the first thing that really jumps out is the athleticism. Very similar to Keldrick Falk. It plays wide receiver at the high school level too. And I remember breaking down the film of Keldrick Falk when he was coming out in 2023 saying, not only is this kid an elite defensive lineman, but he flashes that special athleticism as a pass catcher. I think one of the things you want to talk about is just the body control and the coordination. Like, this stuff matters. He's going to show it as a wide receiver here, but it matters as a defensive lineman. You look at how he can control his body, go be coordinated, go be a fluid athlete. At the end of the day with Nate Marshall, you're just betting on a really big functional athlete that just knows how to move. And it's really hard to find bodies who are 6'4", 265 pounds at the high school ranks that can move like Nate Marshall. And so you want to bet on these kind of guys. Again, really, really athletic, the body control, the physicality at the catch point. This kid could legitimately be a tight end prospect if you wanted to. I think that's how special he is from an athletic standpoint. You see how smooth he is. Now, when you start getting into the defensive line reps, we're going to start getting to the defensive line here. You see him play all over the defensive line. I think one of the things that's really cool, you see him playing kind of a little bit more as an edge rusher here, knows how to use his length, has a really good motor, closes the distance between himself and the quarterback. But as you continue to get through the film right here, we're looking at him playing the nose. Head up on the center. And I think what's so special about Nate Marshall is there's just not many interior offensive linemen that can deal with the athleticism and length that he brings to the table, right? Really good get off. I'm using that length on this interior offensive lineman, kind of just put him in the dirt, and then go look at the closing speed. And this is becoming such an important aspect of defensive linemen. Can you go hawk down quarterbacks when they're trying to extend plays? Again, lining up as a nose, and he's just using that length. Nice little swim move. again, putting that center in the dirt and then go and track down the quarterback. He's a problem wherever he is on the defensive line. I don't think he plays the nose in the SEC unless he puts on a bunch of weight. That being said, he does flash that, positional flexibility on the defensive line. That insane get off. I mean, it's a 6'4", 265 pounds. First one off the line of scrimmage before any offensive lineman's out of their stance and just absolutely in the back for blowing up a play. This kid is extremely explosive. He's extremely athletic, and the play strength is good enough, too, to play on the inside. I think Auburn's going to get really creative in terms of how they use a guy like Nate Marshall. You take a look at Auburn's class in 2025, top 5 class in the country. You got 6 defensive line. You scroll down, and Auburn's top commits are all line of scrimmage players. I mean, Jordan Crawford, Antonio Coleman. Nate Marshall's a guy that I think probably goes the Keldrick Falk route in terms of I think he'll play that defensive end spot, but I also could see him putting on some weight as he continues his career at Auburn and eventually kicking inside to that defensive line position. We'll see how it plays out, but again, you want to bet on these kind of guys. Hugh Freeze has done that all class in 2025. Just watched Jared Smith from Thompson, Alabama absolutely dominate on ESPN2 last night. This Auburn class has a very, very special defensive front. I think a lot of Auburn fans should be really excited about it. We'll close it down there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.